All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another One Youth Devo. Today, we are in the Psalms. I am excited to talk about Psalm 40.
Yeah, Psalm 40. We took a little break from Devos, but that's fine. We're back. And it's Sunday. So, Sunday, we go through the Psalms. For the director of music, that's who this psalm is written for, of David, a psalm. Jamie, do you want to read it?
Sure. Let's do this. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and the mire. He set my feet on a rock, and he gave me a firm place to stand. He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see and fear the Lord and put their trust in him. Blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, who does not look to the proud, to those who turn aside to false gods. Many, Lord my God, are the wonders you have done, the things you planned for us. None can compare with you. Were I to speak and tell of your deeds, there would be too many to declare. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
All right. So, that's the first 5 verses of Psalm 40.
Yeah, that's what we're going to dive deep into today. And speaking of diving deep, we're going to dive right into verse 1. And verse 1 says, I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. You know, oftentimes, it's weird. Surfing is a very patient sport. You paddle out and you wait for a wave. But in a lot of other areas of my life, I am so impatient that it drives people nuts. You know, anyone that's riding with me, I'm always like antsy at the green light because I'm not patiently waiting. So waiting patiently for the Lord is difficult for me. It's like, Lord, I prayed and I want some affirmation, some confirmation of that you heard me right now. And sometimes that's not the case.
Yeah. Waiting is the worst part. All these Psalms, they remind me of songs. So this one in particular, I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined and he heard my cry, is actually a U2 song that was from, I think it was on their Joshua Tree album back in the 80s. I know it kind of is a long time ago, but this psalm was straight up one of their songs. The other song that comes to mind is, I think it's a Tom Petty song that says the waiting is the hardest part, which is just true, man. Waiting for stuff is difficult. But so the psalmist, or David's writing, he's like, yeah, I waited patiently for the Lord, but God turned to me. He heard my cry. His waiting wasn't in vain. And then verse 2, I love verse 2. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire.
Yeah, gross. Slimy pit.
Slimy pit.
Yikes. Ugh. Now, have you ever walked through a very muddy pit?
I remember being a kid and getting these pull on rubber boots and being all excited that I could run in the mud. And then I went up to this farm place on the border of Canada, and it was in Washington State. And I started running around and I sunk in past my boots.
Whoa. Did they fill up?
Which isn't good. The boot, so I had to get my foot out of the mud, and the boot, I had to then reach in and try to extract the boot out of the mud. I'm wondering, for you, Pat, what is the most trapped in mud, or what kind of a slimy pit have you ever been in your life?
You know, I've never really gotten stuck in anything really muddy or slimy. You know, nothing really deep. At least walking, there was a time where I almost got stuck driving through a big pit of mud. But I don't know. I generally try to stay away from muddy pits. When I was a kid, I would go walk around when it was raining in Minnesota and walk through big muddy areas, but it was no more than ankle deep, and it wasn't a very stressful. It wasn't scary. It's not like I was getting stuck. So I've never been in a muddy pit like that.
Yeah, you know, I was looking this up because it's kind of interesting to me, right? It says he lifted me out of the slimy pit. I'm like, oh, that sounds kind of gross. I wonder what that word is in the Hebrew. And the word slimy is more destruction or wasteland or bad. And then the word pit is a cistern. It could also be the world of the dead is another metaphor that they use for it. So Like, that's a pretty deep pit if it goes all the way down to the world of the dead.
Yeah.
But, a cistern, like back in the day, like a well, like you would dig a pit to either hold water or to get water out of the ground. And so whatever was holding that water was pretty slimy. Like if you got in it, it was pretty hard to get out because there was just like slimy stuff everywhere because of all the water. Now, I've been in some pretty like slimy, gross places before. There was a time I'm actually just remembering this right now when I worked at camp. One of my bosses broke a giant water main. And it was like I think it was like an 8-inch water line, which is pretty big.
Oh my gosh.
Like a lot of water lines, like for irrigation, are like little 1/2-inch ones. This was like, 8 inches and had tremendous pressure. And on the side of it was a 2-inch line, and he accidentally broke the 2-inch line off, and it just started dumping water.
Oh no.
And the pressure was so great that it instantly dug a hole that was like big enough you could get into it. Like just right away, all of a sudden, like a hole was there that hadn't been there before. So they were able to shut the water off, and my boss got on the radio and he's like, "Hey, go put on some dirty clothes." And I said, "What do you mean dirty clothes?" He's like, "Go put on clothes where you could be covered in mud from head to toe." And I'm like, "All right, fine." So I did. And I came back, and this was camp, so we had mud bowl every week. Being in mud was like, part of the job, I guess. So I came back, and I looked, and there are already guys in the hole with shovels just digging in mud, like up to their knees, trying to clear this out so they could repair this. And at camp, part of my job, too, was taking the mud bowl and trying to make it extra muddy. Because kids like to go in the mud bowl. Have you been in the mud bowl, Pat?
Yes, I have. So I guess I have been in a pit of mud. I've been in the mud bowl a few times.
What's like your, is that gross to you? Is it like, what's your, what does it feel like to be in a slimy pit?
Being in the mud and in the mud bowl isn't as bad as when you get out. Because when you get out, all that mud gets cold. If there's a little breeze, it feels like the air conditioning is blowing on you. And then it gets hard and crackly, and then your skin just gets dry. It's not a good experience. So I guess I have been in mud a few times, and it feels cool when you're in it. It's kind of squishy. It's kind of fun. You can kind of like lay down in it. But I tell you, you get out, and it's not a pleasant experience afterwards, unless you can rinse off really quickly.
It really isn't a pleasant experience, and mud bowls are gross. The stuff that's in those is like kind of disgusting. I think the point of this, because it says after that God lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and the mire, the next thing he does is he sets his feet on a rock and he gave him a firm place to stand. So if you can imagine you're stuck in a well that has mud all along the sides and it's above your head and your job is to climb out of it and you're just slipping the whole time, you'd be looking for like someone to throw you a rope or for like a rock that you could put your foot on that's like a firm place. I remember years ago, we decided it would be a good idea to put plastic inside of a room, and we plasticked off an entire youth room, floor to ceiling, all plastic. And then we had a giant food fight inside. The only problem was we had taken a kiddie pool and we had filled it with cooked spaghetti. I think we had like 10 pounds of cooked spaghetti, or we'd cooked 10 pounds of spaghetti. It was like 5 gallons of water or something. And then we decided to drain it, and we put in like a bunch of bottles of syrup. Oh. Now, you think syrup is supposed to be sticky.
Yeah.
But syrup, when it gets all over the place, it instantly like turns into the slipperiest thing in the world.
Oh,
and
my
especially on a floor that was plastic. So it was like you were ice skating on syrup.
Nice.
That's the best way I can describe it. And so I was in the room, all these other, there's kids who are all in the room. Everyone's trying to like just stay up. And it was hard just to like stand up straight. And so people were slipping and falling all over the place. And like after a while, like your hips get sore because like you're spending way too much like muscle energy just trying to like not fall. And then you end up falling anyway. So I remember stepping out of that room onto like actual hard surface. And I was like, oh, finally, I have a firm place to stand. Finally, I can like stand up without thinking I'm going to fall over and land on a pile of spaghetti.
That's so funny. And it's so true. You know, having something firm to stand on, you don't have the anxiety of falling over. You know, whenever I read in scripture lines of a firm place to stand, standing on a rock, because it shows up quite a few times, I always remember the first message that I did in front of an entire church, where I talked about building your faith on a solid rock, on God's solid foundation. And I talked about, you know, you can build your faith on sand, but that's just going to fall away. You can build your faith on wood, but then, you know, the termites will come around and that won't work. And so whenever I see a line like that, it just reminds me of a long time ago, just a message that I did.
So this is cool. David is saying, like, God lifted him out of the pit, out of this mud, this mire, this disgusting, slippery stuff, gave him a place where his feet will stand firm. And then he does something to David, verse 3. He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see and fear the Lord and put their trust in him. You ever tried to write a song?
No, never. I think the closest I've ever come to that is I've tried to write a psalm before. That's kind of a weird thing to do. Unless you're kind of into that kind of stuff. I am not very creative when it comes to that kind of stuff. Writing
I bet
songs.
you could write a song right now, Patrick.
You know, that maybe not on this episode of the Devo. Man, maybe we'll save that for a different day. But David is not saying I wrote a song, a hymn of praise to God. He's saying that Christ put a song in his mouth. Now, maybe that will happen in this Devo. Maybe Christ will put a song in my mouth. But I'm not going to try to write a song right now. Sorry, Jamie.
I think people would love to hear that. They'd love to hear your new song. Now, we see in scripture, you know, my little Bible thing has like a little footnote and shows me that like other pages or other parts of the Bible where this is referenced. And the concept of new songs comes up several times. And kind of the one that I think is probably most noteworthy is in all the way at the end of the Bible in the book of Revelation. It says that they sang a new song to God, saying, "You are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals." And it kind of keeps going. But the idea is that in kind of the throne room of heaven, there are these angels and creatures, and they're singing, and there's elders, and they sing this song, you know, to God perpetually. And then God gives them even a new song to sing, which is kind of cool. So David has had a life where he's trusted in God, but God has also given him a new song, which is kind of cool. That not only does God ask that we worship him, God also gives us the songs to worship him with.
And maybe you know the answer to this, because I don't. And so it's a question for you. It says, many will see and fear the Lord and put their trust in him. Is that a response to the new song that the Lord put in David's mouth?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it could be, right? It could be a response to what the new song is. That many will see and fear the Lord. Now, I don't think that's like a lyric of the song. I don't think that's what that's saying, but I could be wrong. But it's just some like pretty good truth, you know? I mean, you got to think of this psalm as like a poem, right? So it doesn't have to necessarily like all kind of make complete sense as you're going through it. It can, there's a little bit of a poetic license. So the phrase on its own, like he put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God, that can stand alone. Yeah. And then the idea of many will see and fear the Lord and put their trust in him can also kind of stand alone too.
Right.
And sometimes those things will have like, they'll actually be connected in a bunch of different patterns and ways or whatever. And I don't know the patterns that are used in Psalm 40. It's still like a great thought, right? Many will see and fear the Lord and put their trust in him. That's like a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the ways I really connect to the Lord is through music, is through songs. Songs have a big influence. Worship has a big influence on me and my life and my relationship with Christ. So I can totally see how that line is applicable on its own in and of itself.
And then the whole new song thing too, I think it's interesting. How many times can you listen to a song before you get tired of it?
Probably in the neighborhood of 30 times.
About 30 times. So once you hear, and that's kind of why, like, if you write a great song, or if there's like a super popular song on the radio, or an album comes out that everyone says this is the best album ever, it might stand the test of time. People might listen to it later, but it's not all they listen to. So I have this ancient technology in my car called a CD player. And on a CD player, I'll listen to a song and it holds one disc. And so after about, anywhere from 30 to 50 minutes of time, that CD will start to loop. You'll get to hear the same song again. And really, I can only listen to, I can maybe do that like twice, maybe 3 times at the most. And then I got to go find another CD. I have to listen to something else. I once heard that song lyrics, you can listen to song lyrics about 50 times. And then after the 50th time, this is like kind of about 50. It's not exactly 50. The lyrics stop. You stop listening to the meaning of lyrics entirely. It's almost like the lyrics don't even exist anymore. And you're not really drawing any meaning out of it. If you keep, you listen again and again and again and again. I think it's cool that God would give us new songs. Yeah. Because the truth of God is still true. And the original song that was being sung was still true. But God even cares about us having the newest songs to praise him with. Yeah. Which is kind of neat.
Moving on to verse 4. Blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, who does not look to the proud, to those who turn aside to false gods.
And I have a footnote that says, or to lies instead of to false gods. I think it's like a phrase that could be used as like lies, but it's probably helpful for us to, because the word actually there is lie, to lie, who turns aside to lies. And in this time, a lie would be like, turning to a false god would be that. So I think it's interesting today because we don't think of there being false gods. We don't think that we look out the window and like, oh, look, there's a false god that I can worship. But I think probably a better idea is looking at like idolatry. So like for us, anything that we put above God becomes like an idol. Man. Anything we look to instead of looking to God can become an idol. So for example, like your education can become an idol. Right. Because you spend all of your energy, time, and effort, and you think your education is going to save you. Well, your education isn't bad. It's really good, and God can use it. But if it gets above God or becomes more important than God, then it's become an idol. The same is true with like success, with money, it can really even be anything. It could be, your own physical appearance you care about more than anything else. Right. Or the praise you get from people can become your idol.
Yeah. Idol, the misconception is, at least I was this way when I was younger, is I thought idol would be like a person. And an idol can take the form of anything. Like you said, it's anything that gets in the way of, your faith.
And it happens like a lot. And I know some people might be listening to this like, well, I haven't really put God like at the top. God is like 5 or 6 things down in my like priorities of life. And I would tell you, get God up at the top. Yeah. Do it now. And I would say do it now because that's how we as people operate best. When we put God at the top, it doesn't mean everything's going to be perfect. It doesn't mean everything's going to get in line. But it's the right thing to do. And it's the best thing to do for you long term. So that's just kind of like a little side note. Put God first, right? And David's saying this, blessed is the person who trusts in God, who doesn't look to other things, who's looking to God. So when you need help, look to God. When you are excited about something, look to God.
Now we're on to verse 5. Yeah. Many, Lord my God, are the wonders you have done, the things you have planned for us. Now there's more of verse 5, but let's just look at that for a quick moment. Many are the wonders you have done. Many is like an understatement in my opinion. And many are the things you've planned for us. That's just so cool to think about how Christ has planned many things for all of us, many paths, many hurdles, but also achievements for all of us. It's like many for everyone. There's not like a few for you, few for me, few for the next person. It's many.
Yeah. And it's not just, and I love it too. It's like, it's the miracles and the wonders that God has done for us, but it's also the miracles and wonders that God's going to continue to do, right? The things that you've planned. Right. So God's faithfulness and God's grace and God's generosity is ongoing. Yeah. It didn't like stop at some point. Right. And that's pretty cool, right? And you think about the guy writing this, right? Like David. So David encountered God at a young age. And he even said, you know, like when he was a shepherd, there were like lions and stuff that would like attack the sheep. And he said that like with God's help, you know, I was able to take care of those. So if God's on my side, I'm going to take care of Goliath. And he went out and killed Goliath.
Right.
Because of God and because of what God had done in his life. So he's seen God's miracles. He's seen them firsthand. And that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah. And he goes on to acknowledge that in the last part of verse 5 by saying, nothing can compare with you. Were I to speak and tell of your deeds, there would be too many to declare. He's totally recognizing that in his life, in only his life, that God has done so much that there's no way he could actually put words to all of them.
Yeah. And in fact, the some of the word here, it's a really short word that kind of says too many to declare, but it basically says countless.
Yeah. Countless
it's
is
like,
right.
Yeah. It's countless. God, all of what you've done, God, all of your good deeds. You know, if I was going to, you know, write a song about your good deeds, the number of words would be countless.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Super cool. Well, go and take some time to check out the rest of this psalm on your own. It's not very long, but go and do a little bit of studying, you know, sometime after you listen to this. At least just go and read it because it's filled with really cool stuff.
And if you want to look up 40, it's a song by U2, and it's actually the words to this song. So I think it's on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, thanks for tuning in to this Sunday's Devo. And I hope that you're looking forward to hearing more from us in the coming days and weeks.
Bye, everyone.